This is the second version of this, and I do not understand what is happening with me on the Whiteboard Wednesday. Fortunately for you, because you're getting to see the second version, and hopefully I can kind of keep things a little bit tighter than I did the last time. I want to talk about, and this is inspired by a couple of conversations I've had recently, plus some discussions I heard earlier today, specifically around enablement. How do we, jump the lead a little bit, how do we build and improve leadership and culture by starting from the front line? What happens if we start on the front line and we provide systems, tools, and resources for our frontline employees to lead self, get better at problem solving and decision making, have a framework that they can use to build out their own system to support goal setting and execution, achieving results, have a simple tool that they can use to improve communication inside the organization? What happens if we empower and enable the people on the front line to do these things well? Do we actually solve for the leadership challenge that exists in, if we're honest with each other, just about every organization that's out there? A lot of organizations struggle with leadership challenges. One of the reasons they struggle with leadership challenges is because they grow really fast. We move people into leadership roles before they're ready. We don't give them the systems and tools and processes to help them do this. We don't support them from a coaching perspective. And then ultimately we're surprised by their failure. Some of them will move back into individual contributor roles at other organizations. Some of them will just completely burn out. And some of them will actually stay in place and lead from a position of kind of zombie leadership. So let's break this down. And I'm going to take some cues from a friend of mine, Scott Leese, in his evolution of sales. And one of the things that he has talked about recently is this evolution of sales from outbound to outbound, inbound to kind of hybrid models to go to market to go to network. And like really leaning on your network and the people who already have relationships with these organizations that you'd like to know better. So he did this image that was that traditional kind of chimpanzee to walking man kind of thing from an evolution perspective. And I'm going to try to do that with a whiteboard, and my drawing skills are not as good as whatever AI tool it was that Scott used. So on the front end, what we said is we've got in this crawl kind of space, we had this kind of view of, yeah, does not look like a baby crawling, but that's what it is. So imagine that is a baby crawling. We had sales enablement. And sales enablement first started to get a lot of attention in about 2013, 2014, 2015. That's when we first created a sales enablement function when I was over at Safari or O'Reilly Media. We created this role because we had a challenge inside the organization where we had a lot of people who were super excited about the work that they were doing with customers and wanted to get more stuff done, but didn't know, and would make a bunch of requests to product or marketing or ops or engineering. But in many cases, they were talking about, and in many cases, we're talking about the same thing, but describing it differently. And the metaphor or analogy that I like to use is fork. So I can describe a fork as a 4-pronged metal eating utensil. I can describe it as a fork, or I can say, hey, I just need to eat. 3 different functions. Engineering will do something completely different with those, but we can get really passionate as sales professionals in working to get our message across inside the organization. So we created an enablement function to enable the team relative to customer communication and internal communication, so that the team could focus on selling and working with customers, not focus on having to do a lot of the internal selling type stuff or internal content creation. So sales enablement, again, that is a crawling, or that's a chimpanzee getting ready to go. And then we moved to the next stage. And what I thought we were going to do, and I talked about this in a group called TLDC, I thought we would actually move into organization enablement. And that is the learning and development community. TLDC is the learning and development community. I thought we'd move into this organization enablement where we'd all be running. We would create this effectiveness team that would help us just sprint and work our way through. And the reality is there was this thing in between, which was revenue enablement, which makes sense. revenue enablement, which kind of focused more on how do we actually go from crawling to walking? How do we create systems and processes to support the things that are happening inside the functional areas of marketing, sales, customer success, maybe some product, depending on the type of motion that you have. But how do we create these building blocks, or excuse me, the mortar that supports the communication that happens and pulls these blocks together? What I thought was going to happen is we were going to move into organization enablement. That was going to be the functional evolution of what learning and development was inside organizations. And I was wrong. And the reason I was wrong is because I don't think organizations were really ready. People weren't talking about it in the context of like biz ops. This was before DevOps and DevSecOps and some of those other ops that are out there, including revenue ops. So revenue ops kind of goes in here. A lot of this depends on how you communicate what it is and how you define those things. But we went from sales ops to rev ops to biz ops, sales enablement, revenue enablement, organization enablement. I think we're still working on this piece. Now, the cool thing that I think is actually happening as you pull all of the different pieces of the organization together, all these individual bricks that kind of start to overlap with each other and align with each other, you start to see, okay, what are the systems and processes that we're going to use inside our organization to improve decision-making, improve alignment relative to goals, and improve how we communicate with each other. So common vocabulary, common processes, common systems. Well, what's this start to sound like? It starts to sound like culture. Well, if you've been around an organization that is bigger than maybe 20 people, that's usually where things start to create, this friction starts to get created. If you've been around an organization that's greater than 20 people, you start to realize, oh no, there's friction that's happening inside the organization, and it's ultimately getting in the way of us being able to serve and support our customers. We have internal needs that we're building up. So, okay, how do we fix it? Well, this is where leadership and culture come into play. And the way that I define the difference between these things is culture is about how we do things here, like how we do the work that we do. Leadership is more about the direction that we're going, where we're going, how we're moving forward. Dan Cockrell nails this in how's the culture in your kingdom around leading self, leading others, leading teams, and then leading organizations. I think one of the struggles that we have is inside our organizations, typically, when we look at the leadership challenge, where do we start? We start at the top. We start at the C-suite. And then we move into other functional leaders. We move into director and VP, operational leaders. And then if we have time, energy, or money, we get into some managers or some other kind of roles inside the organization. And I would challenge you that given that we still struggle with this same problem, that we're looking at the problem incorrectly. What if we shifted this problem on its head and actually started at the front line, started at the role, the sales rep, the person who's developing product, the engineer? What happens if we went to the front line and helped our people, enabled our people with systems, tools, and processes to get better at problem solving and decision making, goal setting and execution, and so achieving results and effective communication? What happens if we put more time, energy, and attention to the front line? I look at this, if we bring it all the way back to here, this is individual enablement. How do we enable people at the individual level to actually drive success inside our organization? And actually, I probably should put it over here and say individual enablement is what happens when we're all starting to row together and run as a team, because now we can lead inside our organizations. We can lead our customers. We can push back when shiny things come up that don't align with our broader objectives of the organization. We know how to push back. We know how to communicate effectively. We know how to reduce blind spots by working through frameworks around problem solving and decision making and goal setting and execution. What if we helped our people with better systems on this? And that is the challenge that I am excited to tackle. This combination of individual enablement, revenue enablement, organization enablement, and how those all rotate back into each other so that we create an environment where our people thrive in the work that they're doing, our customers thrive because of the work that we're doing with them, our business thrives because our customers are growing, and then we're able to bring in more people who can thrive into the organization. And it all continues to fuel itself. That's where I'm going, starting on the front line. So working with individuals and small teams inside organizations to build a better culture of goal setting and execution, problem solving and decision making, and effective communication, and see how that translates to success inside the business. I understand why everybody focuses on the top line, because that's what they're supposed to do. That's what everybody's always done. But if it was working, would we continue to have the leadership challenges that we have inside our organizations? Would you continue to have the leadership challenges that you have inside your organization? Would you continue to have the leadership challenges that you have in your neighborhood and your community? Start at the front line. Start with self. So many people talk about this from a Stoic philosophy perspective. Start from yourself and then earn the right to do those things with others. The challenge, the reason why our kids don't have these skills, I think, is because we're not teaching them in school. The reason we don't teach them in school is because we're not prepared. They're not part of some kind of curriculum. The reason we don't teach them at home is because some parents are ill prepared to teach their kids how to do these things. And at Catalyst Acts, I want to help solve this problem through simple frameworks and tools to help get better at goal setting and execution, which is the game plan, problem solving and decision making, hexagon and some 2x2s, effective communication, your call plan, the basic square, and really get better at designing better interactions with others. So the evolution, I think, has gone from sales to revenue to organization. And then ultimately where I think we're going to go back is starting at the individual level. I would love to hear what you think about this. I'd love to hear how you're investing in your team. I'd love to chat through the challenges that I've seen inside organizations where I think this gets in the way. And my guarantee to you is that if you start at the front line, you start with employees first, you start with the team members, the individuals who are looking to do meaningful work, all of this other stuff will work itself out, and you'll actually go a hell of a lot faster than you ever thought you could. Thanks for listening to Whiteboard Wednesday. If you know somebody who would enjoy this conversation, please share it with them. Point them to the podcast, Find My Catalyst podcast. If you have questions about how I work with organizations, some of the speaking that I'm doing, what I'm doing at events and inside organizations, go to findmycatalyst.com, click on the speaking link. If you're looking to do this as an individual and you need some help, you want to move from chaos to clarity, start with the game plan. If you have questions, hit me up directly. Thank you and have an awesome day.